welcome to the dungeon with Harlan and Andrew.
All right, we are here. Welcome to the dungeon, everybody.
We're doing it. Am I muted or not?
Let's find out. We'll find out from chat.
It's a show tradition.
Let's give it a second so chat can tell us. I'm seeing audio.
We're good. Of course we'd be good. The one time I thought that I was ahead of it.
Yep.
Of course.
All right.
Of course. Hey, I'm Andrew Orvedahl.
And I'm Harlan Kelly.
And this is The Dungeon. This is a show where we chat with people who run tabletop role-playing games and discuss all things role-playing games. We have a very special guest on this episode. She's a writer, comedian, gamer. Please welcome Riley Silverman.
Hello.
Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm excited.
Oh, we've got a lively chat. If you have any questions as you're watching, we try to carve out space at the end for your questions. So keep those in mind. We love our chat questions for sure. I guess right up top, Riley, we like to just get a feel for people's like personal history with role-playing games. Like, what is your personal history with tabletop role-playing games?
I started in high school. I started with the World Darkness setting, so I played Werewolf the Apocalypse mostly. That was my first game into it, and I played a little bit of Vampire the Masquerade, some of the Mage the Ascension, but yeah, I think Werewolf and the Werewolf adjacent games were my big ones. And then a couple of like random fantasy games that like Palladium I played a little bit of, and some stuff that my friends would work on like would kind of like pop up. But that was what I played mostly in my teen years. I feel like it's the analog that I have is like growing up in Ohio, everyone who played cards played euchre, and then I got out of Ohio and everyone else played poker, and poker had like blown up and became this huge game. And that's how I felt about D&D, is that like I knew role-playing games through the language of World Darkness, and then when I started like talking to people anywhere else or outside of my bubble, suddenly I didn't have any literacy for role-playing games for a long time, because I had to like I had to teach myself D&D in order to have conversations with people that have been playing the games that D&D inspired. So
I love that euchre comparison. I'm from Indiana, so I feel like I had that same moment too, where you saw where you just saw poker get like blow up, and then you're like, wait, it's the same. I'm doing the same thing in my brain, but it's just translating differently. And that's I feel that I'm experiencing that as I'm trying to reach out past D&D, where I'm like, I know it's there, I know the feeling is there, I just need to translate it. So that's awesome.
It was like when I hear someone say like, hey, do you want to play cards? In my mind, they meant euchre. And then I realized that they always meant poker. And same thing with like D&D. If like they don't even say role-playing games. They just say D&D. But with 5e especially, I feel like any sort of barrier that I was having towards getting into the game is gone. Like I feel like I'm very much now as much of a D&D-er as I ever was a World Darkness player. So
nice. Yeah, D&D is like the Kleenex of role-playing games. People just use it for everything.
Yeah, I think that I struggled at first with it because like when I was looking into it, it was when still like, you know, 3rd edition to 3.5 were still really popular, and I felt like when I talked to people in my area at the time, it felt like everyone who played D&D was very much into role-playing with 2 L's, and I was into role-playing with an E. Like everyone wanted, like, we want to go through the dungeon, we want to get loot, we don't talk in character, we don't do anything like that. And there's still plenty of games that are like that, but for me, the role-playing is a huge part of the game, and part of what I like. That's why I like 5e so much, is 5e lays way more into the role-playing, I feel like.
Yeah, I'm a late in life gamer a little bit, or just like I didn't start playing until 2016, and one of the reasons I got so into it was from watching Critical Role. Like I'm just part of that generation of gamer, and so I can't imagine like just go like, you know, ROLL playing, of just making decisions. I love making decisions by dice roll, but just having that be the focus and not diving into your character in some way, you know.
Yeah, I think that Critical Role and like the Adventure Zone, like that generation of players has like you can tell who came into gaming from those programs, or who got back into it, or who was heavily influenced by it. At least I feel like it really has shaped what like that era of new gamers or inspired gamers are like.
Yeah.
Totally. I feel like a lot of times when you watch new players, like I don't think I've ever played with anyone that did a voice on their first game. I can't remember. I don't think that they ever have, but and then you can watch, it's like they're in the swimming pool kind of getting deeper and deeper and deeper. Do either of you have any strategies for like helping people? And like my personal strategy, I always tell people, I'm like, just cannonball into the deep end, just embrace the nerdiness of this. Like, yeah, it's going to feel awkward when you make a silly voice or whatever, but I just tell people like, you just got to cannonball in. You don't want to, I was just curious if either of you have any strategies for, encouraging new players to get into the role-playing side of it.
It's tough because like I've been running a game a little bit in quarantine for people who, for the most part, a group of women that from a comic shop that I used to hang out back in LA, and I had run some one-offs for them, but now we're running Lost Mine of Found Delver, and it's the first time with them that they've like played in an ongoing storyline. And so far, I've really only been able to get one of them to really commit to like playing a character and doing voices. And the hard time thing is like I've talked to them about it since then, because she was even saying she felt like she was doing a lot of heavy lifting in all the games, and after a while she's like, I don't want to be the only one playing. And everybody else is like, they don't know if they really want to do the voices and be in character, because they're not from any sort of creative background. Like they're all people who have just like more like logistical type jobs and stuff like that. And that's not saying that everybody who's creative in D&D has a creative job, but I do wonder if it like that's not how everybody likes to play the game. And so I'm wondering if like it's okay if people don't play that way. It's just fun when you have a weird, it's strange when you have a party that kind of mixes and matches, where you have some people who are in character, some people who aren't, and like how do you make that work? But
yeah, Matt Colville has this really good video about role play that kind of articulated like the experience I've had with it, but is I don't think you have to perform in order to start thinking about your character differently from yourself and just going through that cognitive process. And I think that every player across the board is going to play D&D differently. It's why I love the game, is because whenever you sit down at a table with people, it's always going to be a different game depending on who's sitting at the table. So there are people who want to do the voice and are just need to kind of like get over the hump to feel comfortable. And then there are people who just like, they don't want that to be the goal. But I think a lot of the times I've been hard pressed to find someone who does, after if they spend enough time with the character, doesn't start being like just thinking about what they're thinking about and starting to see like or just starting to feel attached to them and not, wanting to, like, when a fight happens, they feel protective of them. They're like, oh, I don't want I don't want this person to go away. I told people about this character or whatever. And so anytime I think you can encourage someone's like imprinting upon this character in whatever way they kind of put forward of being attached to, you can hook them in different ways.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Like we have, I'm playing in a game that's, we just hit about a year of playing. We had our 1 year anniversary game recently.
Congratulations. It's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic weirdly helped, because for a while we were having like weekly games with a few of us that could actually meet every week. But all of us but one player speak in character and do voices. And this other player, she was really new to D&D when we started playing, and she's been playing a lot more during the pandemic and over the course of the last year. She still refers to her character in third person, and she still like describes what they're doing as if like watching it from like afar. Mm-hmm. But you have definitely can tell the investment in the character and thinking about the character and the excitement for the character. And so even though the rest of us are all speaking in character and she's still more describing what her character is doing, it doesn't really like, it's not a detriment to the game. Like the game still flows fine, and we're able to all still have a good time at the table. So I think you're right. I think as long as the person can get invested in the character, that's what really matters.
Yeah,
totally. Yeah, I've never like made anyone do a voice or anything for sure.
I don't know.
I have players that have never done a voice.
I think you made the Growlix guys do it. I think that counts.
Oh no, that's true. That's true. But that's because that was a specific challenge where they had to have the full experience. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I did make them do a voice in that.
Well, and there's a difference between a game that's for performative reasons in a game that's just like people at a table at home.
Yeah.
You know, like I was on. There was a streaming game that was a official tabletop adaptation of the comic book Rat Queens, and it was on Hyper RPG, and I played Braga on that, and it would be weird in that one, I think, if one of us was just like, Braga does this, instead of being like, I do this, like I am performing as this character. And yeah.
Dang, I wish I was in my usual streaming spot because I could turn around and pull the Rat Queens comic book that I have on my shelf and whip it out, but I can't do it, so.
Yeah, on that one especially, because we were playing like already established characters that exist and have their own lore. I think that like made it very much like we had to treat it almost like we were doing an improvised episode of like a non-existent Rat Queens cartoon show or something.
Right, which is just goes to show like how many different ways you can approach playing, and that whatever hook gets someone is just, you know, encourage that as a DM of what people start to sink their teeth in.
Totally. When we were emailing back and forth, Riley, before the show, you had mentioned that you run a good amount of one-shots, and I was wondering if you had any tips or tricks to running a one-shot, because whenever I run a one-shot, it's actually a 2, 3, or 4 shot. I cannot run a one-shot that takes place in one game session, and I was just curious if you had any advice for that.
Well, I will say that most of the time that I run one-shots are usually pre-gens, so I'm usually running like what's in the book. And if I'm running my own thing, I can almost never keep it into one session. But yeah, if I'm running a one shot, usually it's something that's designed to last, like only has a couple locations and like maybe 1 or 2 encounters, and that'll usually get us like to like 3 or 4 hours of gameplay. There's a couple of really good sources. Like there was this book that there was a zine series. I don't know if they're still doing it, but it was called Rolled and Told. And you can find it like comic book shops, and they would have like a new adventure every month. So I had a couple of those that I really liked that would run. And there's a book that I got from DM's Guild called, I always say it wrong. It's like Unchained or Uncaged or something like that. But it's a series of books that are all taking like female monsters from folklore and mythology and like kind of like reimagining them with like a new slant or like new edge to them. So there's like one that's like, it's really cool. Like one was like a Little Mermaid takeoff, and then one like there's one that's like, oh, this is like if you're going after sirens. So it has like just like if you roll, you're at this island, this happens on this island. So like each island, it's an island hopping one shot, but each island encounter probably takes a half hour to 45 minutes. So
that's awesome.
You can just get through it in the course of a day.
Nice. That is super cool.
Yeah. It's a difficult art because, you know, I think that especially usually with one shots, sometimes you're playing with people you haven't played before, or people are playing characters they haven't played before, and so I never know what people are going to get stuck on. And sometimes people will just blow through stuff, and then sometimes they never want to leave the tavern or whatever. So it is its own singular art, I feel like, inside of tabletop role-playing games.
And you don't want to put them on rails.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You're fine. Back in May, a DM that runs my regular weekly game, or the Saltmarsh game that I'm in, he ran a one shot because he got really excited about the Wildmount book, and he ran like all the one shots that are in that book. And our one shot group got so excited about that one shot and our characters for it that we like kept begging him just to keep playing. Like, can you just run a Wildmount campaign for us now, and we'll keep these characters? He's like, I have too many games. I cannot.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah, I've had that pop up too. We had a situation come up in our Monday night game. We stream a Monday night game here that Harlan runs, where my character took a fatal amount of damage, but
42 points of damage. 42 points of damage. It's burned in my brain.
And what's your max HP?
21. So I took exactly enough damage.
That's a kill shot.
But so we had a discussion about it, and I remembered the rules incorrectly. So I was arguing from a point of ignorance, not because I was precious with the character, but it's one of those things. I just remembered it wrong. It was like a Berenstain Bears thing. I just remembered the rules wrong, and instead of looking it up, was like, no, I'm pretty sure it's like double the negative of your. If I took negative 42, I'd be dead. Which anyway, I was wrong.
He said it so confidently too that I was like, yeah, that's how I remember it too. Yeah.
And I just completely blew it. And so in the moment, Harlan made a table ruling of like, all right, he's knocked out. And then after the game, we consulted the book, and immediately we're like, oh no, we were wrong. So the rules is written, the character's dead. So the question I had for you is like, how do you feel about a ruling at the table versus rules as written, and like DMs retconning huge events like that?
I come from the church of what happens at the table for the fun of the game takes precedent over the rules as written, because I think that one of the things about D&D is there's so many rules that I think that part of what helped me start really enjoying D&D more was when I realized that, oh, nobody knows all the rules. Like, people have been playing for decades, don't know all the rules. People tweet at like Chris Perkins asking him for, did I say his name right? For rulings, and then like people who have been playing, and then everyone's arguing in the responses about if he's right about the rules. And so I think that like that's a great example of one where, yeah, you guys could have stopped game and gone and gotten the book and looked it up and that kind of thing, but instead in the moment you just made the ruling and moved on. And it sounds like you have like a way of kind of like working on it moving forward. Like, I think, yeah,
because it's been a great time. You know, Andrew and I have talked about it. We kind of like have come to, we know how we're gonna move forward, but spoilers. But
yeah,
it's been such a great time talking to Andrew about it, because we've been diving into specifically this. We've been like talking about our philosophy about like, because I'm the same way. I'm a like rules as I'm a at the table is what matters. Just like go with what feels right. Like, it's okay. It doesn't matter. We're all just making things up. It's our story. Let's not worry about it, as long as everyone feels on the same page. And the more Andrew and I've talked about it, the more we're like, we're not arguing with each other. We're just like excited about like, okay, what does this mean? And so if we feel comfortable with this, what are we going to do? And so, I love hearing you say that, because it's exciting to hear people talk about the game that way, because I think it's just what I believe in. Yeah.
Well, we had a similar situation so I'm also on a D&D show called The Broken Pact, and it's actually D&D's Twitch channel. Ooh. And we've had 3 seasons so far. Our last one was last fall. We started in Ravnica. We were Ravnica's tie-in game when that book came out. And then when Avernus was big, like a lot of the shows were moved to Avernus to kind of highlight that location, because it's such a fun place to play in.
I love hell.
But yeah, and I love death machines. So like I like having like essentially Road Warrior in D&D. But we had a scene where my character, we basically went the wrong way, and our DM chose to keep all the CRs what they were in the book. So no matter what level we were at, it was like, if you go to Harumon's Hill and you're not ready to fight Harumon, you're going to be in trouble. So we had that happen, and my character took what should have probably been a fatal level of damage, because I can't remember the math at the time, but it was something like, when he first hit me, I thought he did double my HP and damage to knock me down, and then it wasn't. But while we were trying to figure that out, what we missed was I did take more damage after I dropped to saving throws. So I should have lost saving throws, but I didn't. We didn't mark it that way, so I was rolling. So like the way we were playing it, I think I had one more roll, but in reality, I should have just been dead flat out, dead to rights. But it kind of worked out for us, because we had just done a charity auction thing or a charity rally for Extra Life. And one of the things that the audience could unlock for our show, if they got to a certain level, was this elixir, and the DM didn't tell us what it did, but what it did was, when you drank it, you basically got all the benefits of a long rest. So you got completely restored, full spell slots, full health, everything. But the catch was, you lost permanently one saving throw. So when my character was like dead to dying, one of the other players was like to me, he was like, do you want me to give you this potion? I didn't know. He goes, I know what it does. You don't know what it does. Should I give it to you? And I was like, I'm unconscious, so I can't make that decision for my character. You have to decide. And then we end up agreeing to do it. And I took the potion, full health, back to life, no longer dead, but now my character permanently has lost one saving throw. And so that's a situation where, yeah, it would have been fine if I had just died on that hill. Like, I would have made a new character, we would have moved on, it would have been fine. But I think the drama of that moment was so much more fun, of like, you have this potion, but now you are permanently a little bit at death's door, and that's just how you exist from now on.
Yeah, that's awesome. We talked about that on the show here and there too. Is I'm such a fan of permanent consequences, like, and that's, you know, when you have this moment of like, I don't know if death or is here or there or whatever, like, that's such a good middle ground too, of just there's this permanent consequence, and that just exists now. So that's so fun because it's dramatic and it feels fun as a character, because then you have this whole like experience and motivation, and
Yeah, I've heard of DMs. Someone said, I think maybe even Crit Roll does this, but I'm not sure. I haven't heard for sure. But I think there's some DMs that if your character gets revived, like if you get brought back from the dead, you're permanently down 1 point of Constitution. Like, that's just what he always does. Like, gives you a penalty of your con to reflect the fact that you've been brought back from the dead.
That rules. I think I'm going to do that from now on. That's such a good... I've never heard... I watch Crit Roll, and I maybe I just never noticed that, but regardless...
I could be wrong. He might have been saying that's the rules he was getting it from, but I can't remember. But that's what my DM does.
Either way, I'm going to do that now. That's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
So if you lost a saving throw, that means if you rolled a 1 on your saving throws, you just die.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh man,
it makes sense.
Brutal.
I love that with like the resurrection spells and stuff. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and it just worked out. We had one potion that we had gotten from our audience, and so it was like fun that we had a chance to use it, and it was fun that it had a consequence. And like, yeah, I mean, it would have been fine if my character died. Like, I am not precious about my characters dying. I love making new characters, so I actually like get excited when I get to do it. I like my character. She's had a fun arc, and it's been fun to play her. So I'm glad she's not dead. But at the same time, I think that, like we said, for the story and what happened in the moment, it was way more fun to let that happen the way. Like, I didn't even realize until way later that I should have died in that. It wasn't like in the moment I was like, oh, I should have died. It was only like 3 or 4 months ago that I realized, oh, I should have died last fall. Like, that character, I shouldn't have, but Thelma should have died last fall. And then I haven't gone back. I need to rewatch the episodes. I'm not 100% sure we did the math wrong, but I think that we did. But I need to watch it at some point to like really know that we messed it up or not.
Oh man,
as long as you never watch it, you'll never really know.
It's Schrodinger's death save.
Yeah.
Oh man, I've been game taping ours from this week. It's been fun. Yeah, and because I think that, you know, tabletop role-playing games are a unique time where this moment of litigation with me and Andrew has just been fun. It's not been like, I mean, and that is because Andrew's a great player and he's got a great attitude about it, and there's this like trust, but you know, a thing Andrew said is like, oh, I'm okay with whatever happens. Let's talk about like why we should do whatever we do, rather than like if I'm right or you're right or whatever. And that just feels good. That's like the anti-rules is written, well, here's the proof. It's more of just like, okay, let's build a thing for fun.
And in service of a good game. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think having open and honest conversations about like the table is like super important to a healthy table. Like we had, I think we were talking off mic or off before we recorded about the liking or disliking the not seeing the dice when we're rolling with online gaming. And because I think as a player, I still love to roll dice, and I love to have the physical dice in front of me. As a DM, I'm happy to have digital dice to get the math out of the way. But we actually had an incident come up in our game, our Saltmarsh game, where I actually had to kind of say, I don't care for this. People were starting to do like secret rolls with the DM, where they would like private message the DM on Zoom and like say, hey, I want to do this thing, and then roll about it, and then we'd find out afterwards like what their role had been, or if we would find out. And I kind of raised it like I don't like that at my table, because I think what I didn't like about it was that it's a thing you can only get away with in an online game that you could not get away with at the actual table. Like, you couldn't be rolling, like you couldn't secretly roll dice at the table and have nobody know you did it. And so for me, it felt like a distrust at the table of, oh, I don't trust these players to not metagame if I roll a dice or I do a thing that my character is doing. And that I think that's why it bugged me. And then again, everybody's role-playing style is different. But for me, it felt like I'd rather you trust that I will not metagame what your character did if you roll a dice at the table when we see it happen. And then I'll role-play my perception tells me that I'm seeing or whatever's happening in this moment.
Right. Yeah. And I would say like I've been trying to do that with real life games. I've been trying to do the Zoom thing. I love like building like little secret things with certain players, but that's not the point. The point is that like if something was making you feel bad because of whatever structure it is, you were able to go to the table and be like, hey, this just makes it less fun for me, and like participate in that rather than I don't know. Like, rather than seeing this thing and not being able to talk about it, or being it like a thing that you're trying to beat other people with.
Yeah, and I think it's fine for DMs to like want to run scenes with individual players and things like even on Critical Role, they've had moments where the whole cast has left the table except the one person who has their secrets being told, and I'm fine with that. And like I even after we had that conversation, I ran a scene with my DM because I didn't think it was going to be at a game, so I ran a scene of like what I was doing at this point in time, but that's not the same as like when you're actively at the table and people are trying to play and like a whole second game is happening underneath the game you're currently playing. It felt weird to me. Especially
if it's not kind of regimented out, if people are just starting to like pull attention away from things that are happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're flying through this. I'm loving all your thoughts.
We can get to the roll. Yeah, we can get to the roll table. So we have a table of 20 questions. If you could roll a D20, we'll see what question pops up here.
Sure.
Leaving it up to the dice.
I rolled a natural 20. I rolled on D&D Beyond.
No one's ever got the nat 20. The nat
it's
20,
our first one. Congratulations.
The tables get turned around. You can ask us any question you like. That's what happens.
Oh no, I don't know the questions.
Yeah,
if one just pops in your head.
Or if even if you don't ask a question, you just want to like talk about a certain thing in gaming, or make do. Andrew's done his funny accents like twice on here, so just if you have any part of gaming you want to just like dive into.
Would you rather have a natural 20 or an epic fail? Like, what do you think is more fun in game? It's like a huge success or a huge failure?
Oh, I am a nat 1 boy across the board. I will make weak characters. I mean, I know Andrew will too. Like, I love a scrawny.
Proved it on Monday.
I love a scrawny, risky character because because I think it helps me. I really like failure in these games because I think I'm someone who's so anxious and nervous all the time too that. And trying to make sure things don't go wrong or whatever, that it's a really freeing part of the game for me to be like, I'm going to make a mess. Like,
yeah.
So I'm a natural 1 person across the board.
Same here. I strongly believe Dungeons & Dragons isn't like something to be like conquered like a video game. It's like a story that you're telling with the other people in the group. And I think that those like setbacks and pitfalls that come with natural ones are like, as we were saying, so much more memorable, and they can just radically change events. And you just see it at the reactions at the table. Someone is lying to the town guards and it's like, all right, give me that deception roll, and they get that one, and it's like, oh god, like it's not just like they maybe believe your lie. It's like you have failed and now you're in this trouble. I like seeing those reactions for sure.
Yeah, I feel like as a DM too, you can really make some fun things happen with a failure. Like I actually had in one of my home games, I actually had a downtime action that I epic failed. I was trying to like my cleric was trying to like proselytize to get new followers, and I failed so badly that my DM gave me a rival, like another, like a woman from like a rival god, and
that's awesome.
That's so good.
Yeah, and over the course of like the next several like sessions, if my character tried to do stuff, she would be like a thorn in my side until eventually we ended up in a like a cleric's duel, basically. Like it was a duel at high noon in the middle of town where my cleric, and he used the because I'm a Tempest cleric, and he used the Kraken Priestess stats from the Monsters Manual to make another cleric, and so we basically had this duel to the death in the middle of town, and it only happened because I crit failed on my proselytizing roll during downtime.
I love that.
That's so good. Yeah, and it's like failures feel like the beginning of a story, and 20s feel like end of a story. Like the only time I can like imagine even like a 20 really being this like epic, huge, dramatic thing is when you're, all the chips are down and it like gets you out of a sticky situation. Whereas like one's like, all right, let's kick things off. Let's go in my brain too.
A nat 20 to end like a boss battle is always fun. It's like a cherry on top of a sundae. It's like awesome, very neat. But yeah, even that I don't think is as memorable as the juicy fails. We do have one question in chat. I want to ask it real quick. I know we're a little bit over time. Riley, have you ever integrated any like anime or pop culture storylines in your games or anything comic related? I know you already said you were in like a Rat Queen game, but maybe something that's like you borrow from pop culture and put it into a different intellectual property.
So the craziest thing that I've done with that regard is that a friend of mine in LA every year watches Mamma Mia on Thanksgiving, and so it's become like an annual tradition. And when we were watching it one year, someone was saying how the movie could play out if you consider that Amanda Seyfried's character is being ritually bound to the island. That's where the songs are actually happening, and so that she's basically like Calypso. And so I made a island setting one time for a game that was basically the island from Mamma Mia, and the players arrive and there's like 3 hags that have bound this girl to the island, and I had like ABBA songs ready to go to play on the computer as like the ambient sound for the session when we played it. So yeah, I love taking pop culture things and putting
I love it.
That's so good. What a like creepy, wonderful, like it's just like such a creepy, wonderful like spin on such a normal movie. I love it so much.
Yeah, one thing I love doing too on Roll20 is when I have the like NPC characters, I like to drop in like characters from movies and TV shows as the NPC tokens. So like I had a session where like the characters were invading some like just like some criminal underground, and there was like they're supposed to meet like lackeys and thugs on the way there, and so I just used the plastics from the Mean Girls. Like I'm just realizing apparently I just love using Amanda Seyfried in all of my.
I love it.
Oh, that's so good.
Riley wrote a great article. It's on Nerdist. It's Finding Our Queer Identities in Dungeons and Dragons. I'm going to drop the link in chat right now.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and I'll tweet it after this too.
Yeah, totally. There it is. It's in the chat. If people want to check that out. And yeah, thank you so much for guest on the show. That was great.
Thanks for having me. That was fun.
Yeah, really appreciate you coming on. Do you have anything you want to plug before you take off?
I think that Nerdist thing is good. Yeah, click on that if you like it. Share that. That's actually probably the best. Oh, and yeah, I'll tell you what I'll plug. It's not D&D specifically. It's the Doctor Who role playing game. But I am on a podcast called The Game of Rassilon, and we are an actual play podcast that's playing the Doctor Who role playing game, and I play the Doctor. So.
Oh, whoa, nice. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's a goofy show. It's comedic, so everyone who plays the game is a big fan of the Adventure Zone. So we were kind of going for that kind of vibe for the show. So there's a lot of like gags and goofs and stuff like that. And it's me doing a terrible British accent because I can't abide playing a doctor with an American accent. So
that's so funny you brought that up. We've talked a bunch about about how terrible I am at British accents. So I'm with you. Solidarity, British accents.
But yeah, that show, Ben Padden is our GM, and then we have a Michael Nixon and Dan Peck, and we just added a new companion to our show. So Kate Leigh is Connie something. But
that's amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. Everyone go listen to that podcast. We'll drop links to it on our socials. And yeah, Riley, thanks so much for coming on. This is The Dungeon. If you're listening to this in podcast form, thank you. Tell your friends about it. We also, Andrew and I, play in a game on Monday nights that's live on Twitch called Better Than Heroes. You can watch all of the episodes online on our YouTube channel. And you can join us Monday nights at 7 o'clock Pacific time on Twitch. So, yeah, Riley, thank you so much. This has been absolutely wonderful.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in on chat.
Yeah, good to see you. And we'll see. Don't forget. Tip your DM.
Your DM.
Yeah.
You did it. All right.
See y'all.
Bye.